In the stillness of the night, as their lips met in a tender kiss, a sinister premonition crept into the heroine's heart. That fleeting moment of sweetness threatened to turn into a catastrophe, capable of destroying the fragile peace of her family hearth. Desperate attempts to share her anxieties with her lover were met with a wall of incomprehension. His words sounded like a sentence. Nothing would make him reconsider his position, for he was not prepared to share his life with a woman whose actions seemed to him frivolous and reckless, regardless of extenuating circumstances. Realizing that she could not change the course of events, the heroine felt the acute pain of loss. The cause was a fateful confession and a moment of weakness brought on by intoxication. Now, her soul was consumed with bitter self-hatred for what had happened. This bitter experience became a harsh lesson in the importance of being cautious in choosing friends and entrusting intimate secrets only to those who have been tested by time and loyalty. However, the heroine did not absolve herself of responsibility for what had occurred, acknowledging that it was her actions that led to such tragic consequences. But as it turned out, this was just a retaliatory strike. A few days after he accidentally overheard a conversation in which a close friend ridiculed him and revealed the terrible secret that the child he thought was his was not his own flesh and blood, he decided to take revenge. In the life of a 30-year-old woman, married to a 40-year-old man and raising a 7-year-old daughter, a drama unfolded comparable to a gripping thriller. On the day of her 30th birthday, her husband learned certain facts that radically changed the course of events. To maintain clarity of mind and avoid confusion in the narrative, the narrator intends to refer to her lover and husband simply as lover and husband. This approach will avoid errors and focus on conveying her thoughts and feelings without unnecessary complications. Nicole, her best friend since school, was invited to visit because her husband was away and her daughter was spending time with her grandparents. The friends reminisced, discussing events that had happened to them since high school. They recalled youthful pranks and follies experienced together. Perhaps it was the alcohol or the abundance of free time that allowed them to discuss topics that had long remained in the shadows. The evening was filled with laughter and nostalgia for the good old days. It was a kind of respite from the daily grind, an opportunity to reconnect and strengthen a bond based on shared experience. Nicole shared memories of how her friend had called her in a panic upon learning of her pregnancy, tormented by doubts about the child's paternity. As it turned out, her fears were confirmed, and the woman's husband was unaware of her infidelity and subsequent pregnancy. The only person privy to the secret of the affair and pregnancy was her best friend, Nicole, who had repeatedly covered up her meetings with her lover. Nicole became a true support for her friend, providing much-needed emotional support and giving valuable advice during a difficult period of her life. The woman knew that she could trust Nicole completely, confident that her secrets would remain safe and that she would always find support and understanding in moments of doubt. Meanwhile, the husband was planning a grand surprise for his wife's 30th birthday, wanting to impress her with his attention and love. The woman accidentally overheard his conversation, learning about the upcoming large-scale celebration. It was not easy for her to remain calm throughout the week, anticipating the exciting event. She even began to hint about the desired gifts so that everything would go perfectly. Finally, the long-awaited birthday arrived, and the woman was overjoyed. The morning began with coffee in bed, prepared by her caring husband. The drink was not only delicious, but also beautifully decorated, which gave it a special romantic touch. The woman saw how her husband was trying to make this day unforgettable. Enjoying her coffee, she felt immense gratitude for such an attentive and loving partner. The day was starting perfectly, promising to be a truly special celebration. She mentally noted that she would have to hint to her boyfriend about such a gesture of attention when they met next week to celebrate her birthday. As evening approached, the heroine of the narrative was caught off guard by an unexpected message urging her to contact a private designer to prepare for the upcoming event. This visit was a real treat for her, where she was pampered like royalty, striving to create an impeccable image befitting the solemn occasion. The designer, showing her talent and skill, offered her a delightful dress that perfectly accentuated her figure. In this outfit, the heroine felt like royalty, confidently and gracefully appearing at the evening event. The meticulous attention to detail and care put into preparing for this event gave her a sense of exclusivity and deep gratitude for the experience. Further instructions followed, urging her to enjoy the evening to the fullest. She couldn't shake the thought of what other surprises the day might hold. Soon, a new message arrived announcing the arrival of a limousine ready to take her to her destination. Inside the luxurious car, champagne and exquisite snacks awaited her. She was overjoyed, realizing that her husband had gone to such lengths to turn her birthday into a truly royal event. Upon entering the hall, she was struck by the splendor of the decorations and design. It resembled a wedding celebration more than a typical birthday party. Among the guests, she saw close friends and relatives, as well as colleagues, sharing this special evening with her. Her husband appeared on stage, announcing her arrival. All eyes were on her, and she noticed that the guests were admiring her transformation. Ahead, she saw Nicole, who gave her an encouraging smile, confirming that she looked stunning. At the appointed hour, she appeared on stage and took center stage. Soon, a touching presentation unfolded on the screen, vividly depicting the story of their meeting, the blossoming of love, the magical moments of their wedding celebration, and then the tender anticipation of motherhood and the birth of their long-awaited daughter. The scenes changed, telling of the first days of parenthood, and her heart overflowed with gratitude for her husband's efforts to make this day unforgettable. Unable to contain her overwhelming emotions, she rushed into his arms. However, her husband stopped her with a smile, asking her to save her emotions, as the most interesting part was yet to come. Intrigued, she couldn't imagine what else he could have devised to surpass such a touching surprise. After kissing her daughter, who, as it turned out, was complicit in this performance, she returned to her seat at her husband's request. Suddenly, she was blindfolded and seated on a chair displayed for all to see. Anticipating something unusual, she waited in suspense. Suddenly, she felt a touch on her lips, and assuming her husband wanted to kiss her, responded to the affection. When the blindfold was removed, she saw her lover, the father of her child, passionately kissing her. In the corner stood her husband, who calmly watched the scene unfold, as if he knew everything in advance. He announced that he would like to introduce to everyone, for those who were confused, the man kissing his wife. He asked everyone to applaud loudly the man who had given his wife the joy of motherhood. Her face contorted in horror, and the blood drained from her face. At that moment, she realized that her secret affair had been exposed, and the consequences of her actions were about to fall upon her in front of everyone. Silence filled the hall as the shocking truth dawned on everyone. She realized that her life would never be the same. She was unable to utter a word, paralyzed by the shock of what was happening. All eyes were on her, and at that moment, she realized that this entire carefully planned intrigue unfolding over the past week had a single purpose: to publicly humiliate her in the eyes of everyone she had known throughout her life. Her heart pounded in her chest like a bird trapped in a cage, as she desperately tried to gather her thoughts and find a worthy response to this monstrous accusation. The pressure of the situation was so unbearable that she felt a flush of shame creep across her face as she frantically searched for a way out of this nightmare. Suddenly, her husband broke the silence, admitting that he had been so naive and blinded by his trust in her that he had never even considered the possibility of her infidelity. He recounted that on the very day she had met with Nicole, he had decided to return home early to surprise her. However, they were so engrossed in their conversation that they didn't notice him quietly entering the house and becoming an unwilling witness to their revelations. She had no idea that her secret had been discovered, and as soon as her husband learned the truth about her deception and the role of her friend in this dirty business, he decided that he had to teach her a harsh lesson. This turn of events was completely unexpected for her. She tried to find Nicole in the crowd, but her eyes were clouded with tears, and the search proved futile. Then she saw her daughter, crying inconsolably and clinging to her father, as if seeking protection from her mother. At that moment, a wave of sudden self-disgust washed over her. She realized that her actions had caused unbearable pain to those she loved most in the world. The weight of her mistakes crashed down on her like a pile of bricks, crushing her with its immense weight. She knew that she had to immediately rectify the situation and restore what had been destroyed. Later, the heroine's husband moved on to even more painful accusations, portraying her as a shameless mother willing to engage in a monstrous conspiracy with her lover. According to him, she had allegedly made a deal allowing their depraved affair on the condition that the lover completely cut off contact with their shared daughter. He claimed that for the sake of fleeting personal happiness, she was willing to sacrifice her own child, continuing to cynically lie and deceive her husband about the paternity. The heroine, by her own admission, was shocked and hurt by these accusations, as they, to her horror, turned out to be true. She really did not want to end the relationship with her lover, and even agreed to a vile lie, claiming that the child was her husband's, just to maintain the affair. The woman saw the disgust reflected on the faces of those present and felt the condemnation piercing their gazes. The family was shocked and devastated by these revelations. She realized that she faced an incredibly difficult task: to gain their understanding. She had nothing to say in her defense because her husband had never treated her badly, except for his failure to satisfy her sexual needs. There were no serious problems in her family life. Her husband idolized his daughter, believing her to be his, and never doubted his paternity. The heroine felt a deep sense of guilt and shame for betraying their trust, but at the same time understood the need to honestly express her needs and desires. It was an extremely difficult conversation, and she could only hope that in time, her loved ones would be able to understand and forgive her. The celebration came to an end, and the guests began to leave. The heroine's husband, consumed by anger, declared that she was free to leave the house with her lover, since there was no place in his home for such a selfish person. He also expressed his intention to protect his daughter from further contact with her mother, not wanting her to continue manipulating the child for her own benefit. The heroine, as if struck by lightning, remained sitting on the chair, trying to make sense of what had happened. She couldn't believe that a fleeting infatuation would turn into such a crushing blow, turning her seemingly stable life upside down. Glancing around the empty room, she found none of her acquaintances. Desperate attempts to reach Nicole and her lover went unanswered. Both persistently ignored her calls. In complete solitude, the heroine made her way to the nearest motel, where she spent the night. The next morning, after 2 hours of fruitless attempts, she finally managed to contact her lover. However, instead of sympathy and support, she heard only accusations that she had caused him a lot of inconvenience. The man stated that the only reason he had maintained the affair was to keep the fact of their shared daughter a secret. Now that the secret was out, he wanted nothing to do with her and was immediately ending all relations. The heroine of this story desperately tried to contact Nicole, believing that only she could understand the depth of her feelings. However, Nicole stubbornly rejected the calls, which made the woman doubt the strength of their friendship. After all, it was Nicole who was privy to the deepest secret, the truth about her pregnancy, and the real father of her daughter. Soon, a message arrived from Nicole, in which she explained that it was difficult for her to offer support right now due to trust issues that had arisen with her husband. She promised to get in touch as soon as the situation calmed down a bit. At that moment, the heroine was overcome with a feeling of complete loneliness in the struggle against the chaos she had created in her own life. She realized that no one would come to the rescue and fix what she had done. She needed to take responsibility for her actions and untangle this web of problems on her own. It was a bitter but sobering realization, necessary for personal growth and learning from past mistakes. And so, she is writing this post to ease her mind a little and clarify what is happening. Perhaps this will help her analyze everything that went wrong and make the right decisions in the future. She appeals to readers not to judge her, but to give constructive advice on how she should cope with this difficult situation. The story took an unexpected turn, and many readers expressed keen interest in the future fate of the characters. The main character, tormented by remorse, lost sleep, haunted in her nightmares by the look of disgust in her daughter's eyes. She found no peace, standing guard at the school every day in the hope of even a fleeting encounter, a conversation, but all was in vain. Her daughter avoided her as if she were a stranger, passing by with complete indifference. The woman felt like a completely failed mother, unable to repair the broken relationship with her own child. The pain of rejection was unbearable, but she understood that she had no right to give up. A thought arose in her head. Perhaps reconciliation with her husband would be the key to restoring her relationship with her daughter. She was aware that she wasn't the perfect wife, but her love for her daughter was sincere and all-consuming, and she couldn't accept their estrangement. Time was working against her, and she understood that with every minute, her daughter was drifting further away. The protagonist decided to act and make the first attempt to mend relations with her husband. She hoped that by demonstrating to her daughter her ability to admit mistakes and change, she would see her in a new light and want to restore their bond. The woman headed to the house where her husband had settled with their daughter. Her mother-in-law was helping him care for the child, who still needed constant attention. The protagonist understood that a conversation in the presence of her mother-in-law would be pointless, as she had always treated her with hostility. She wrote her husband a message asking for a meeting to discuss matters concerning their daughter and suggested meeting at a nearby cafe. She understood that this might be the only way to convince him to talk to her. Approximately half an hour later, he entered the coffee shop. Anticipating his arrival, she had already ordered his favorite drink and invited him to take a seat opposite her. His gaze expressed a complete lack of interest in what was happening, and he impatiently asked her to get straight to the point of the meeting. She began the conversation by asking about their daughter's well-being, inquiring about her progress in school and her overall condition. He replied that he was fully aware of his responsibility for the child and repeated his request that she not waste time on introductions and immediately get to the purpose of their meeting. Taking a deep breath, she began her carefully prepared speech about the possibility of starting over. She emphasized that their daughter was still too young to face the stress that accompanied their current situation. She expressed hope that they could find a compromise and restore the family. She emphasized the importance of their daughter's well-being and the need to put aside personal differences for her happiness. As a solution, she suggested seeking the services of a family counselor or mediator to find a way out of the situation that would suit everyone. In response to her 10-minute monologue, he burst out laughing. He stated that he had always known about her lack of sincere interest in preserving the marriage and relationship and urged her to stop trying to mislead him. He advised her to stop pretending to be a caring wife and mother who wanted to start over. He suggested that her ego was hurt by the fact that their daughter didn't feel affection for her. He suggested she seek professional help to sort out her problems and become a better person. His words, like a dagger, pierced her heart, making her realize the impact her actions had on those around her. He stated that he had completely figured her out and saw no reason to trust her for even a second. He was determined to protect their daughter from her influence. These words threw her off balance, and in a fit of anger, she reminded him that he wasn't the biological father of the girl, and that he had no right to deprive her, the biological mother, of the opportunity to communicate with her daughter. He replied that he would fight to the end to keep her away from the child. With these words, he angrily left the coffee shop, leaving her in a state of extreme indignation at his words and behavior. The protagonist's attempts to improve relations unexpectedly turned into a painful confrontation of egos, where each of the spouses stubbornly fought for the right to sole custody of their daughter. This heartbreaking situation rapidly escalated, leaving both in a state of deep emotional pain and mutual misunderstanding. Despite the disagreements, the mother's heart held a glimmer of hope that they could find a way to put the child's well-being above their own ambitions. Along with the expected divorce notification, the woman also received a court document regarding custody of her daughter. Subconsciously preparing for defeat in the divorce proceedings, she cherished the hope of winning the custody case in order to prove to her ex-husband that despite all his efforts, she remained the girl's biological mother. However, as expected, the court dissolved the marriage, depriving her of the right to alimony due to infidelity. This outcome, for which she had internally prepared, wasn't a devastating blow to her. A difficult trial began regarding the custody of the child, which turned into a dirty fight. During the process, accusations surfaced that the woman had hidden the truth about the child's paternity from her husband, knowing from the very beginning of the pregnancy that he wasn't the biological father and had continued to deceive him for many years. The emotional tension reached its peak when the truth was revealed in the courtroom, and both sides presented evidence to support their claims. The judge's decision was to determine the future of the child, who found herself at the epicenter of this turbulent situation. The ex-husband presented evidence in court suggesting irresponsible motherhood, claiming that the woman regularly left their daughter in the care of her grandparents to meet with her lover. In his opinion, she had no grounds to claim custody, as he continued to provide their daughter with everything she needed, even after learning he was not her biological father. This, according to the man, demonstrated his responsibility as a parent and that the child would be more comfortable staying with him. Additional arguments against the mother's custody included the fact that she lacked a stable income and suitable housing. There was a risk she might run away with her lover, leaving their daughter unattended. In response to these accusations, the woman could only offer her love for her daughter and the fact of their biological connection. After the trial, the woman was deeply disappointed when the court, represented by the judge and jury, ruled that she was incapable of providing adequate care for her own daughter. The essence of the verdict was that motherly love alone is not enough to create a stable and safe environment necessary for a child's full development. The need to prioritize the well-being and best interests of the child was emphasized. In such situations, it was noted, it is crucial to seek qualified legal assistance and carefully discuss possible custody options. The girl's biological father, with whom the woman had a close relationship, refused to take responsibility for raising the child because, according to her, she never asked him to. During the court hearing, an audio recording was presented in which the woman boasted about how she had deceived her husband, assuring the person she was speaking to that he would never have to worry about supporting the child until her husband found out the truth. It turned out that this was the reason the man stayed in a relationship with her, as he had never wanted to be a father. The woman was constantly aware that this recording would present her in a very negative light, creating the impression that she had neglected her daughter's well-being even before she was born. In the end, her worst fears came true. After the trial, which left her deeply traumatized, she faced agonizing loneliness, finding no one with whom to share her experiences. The loved one who had once been by her side suddenly distanced himself, explaining his departure by saying that she had become too clingy and dependent on him. He, who strived for freedom from any obligations, now felt that her problems were unfairly drawing him into a whirlpool of trouble, forcing him into the role of a father, which he never wanted. Not wanting to have anything to do with the situation, he urged her to stop all contact. Feeling lost and abandoned, she didn't know who to turn to for support and comfort. The pain of rejection was so strong that she desperately sought ways to heal her broken heart. In an attempt to find support, she tried to contact Nicole, but was ignored. Later, Nicole sent a message explaining that her husband had warned her not to communicate with her, as she was embroiled in a scandalous situation. Their relationship was experiencing a crisis of trust after her infidelity became public knowledge. Nicole expressed regret that she could not offer support, but emphasized that she had no choice if she wanted to save her marriage. Despite the pain caused by her response, she understood Nicole's need to prioritize her life and focus on strengthening her marriage. It was a difficult situation for both women, and she respected her friend's decision to focus on rebuilding her relationship with her husband. She no longer wanted to be the cause of problems in anyone's life. At this moment in time, the person is experiencing an overwhelming feeling of loneliness, guilt, and depression clouding their existence. Their mind is constantly tormented by questions about the decisions they made, and the weight of negative emotions seems to paralyze their will. It is difficult to see a glimmer of hope in the surrounding darkness, but they realize the need to find a path to healing and further progress in life. The primary task is to show strength of spirit and strive to atone for their guilt towards their daughter, in order to gradually, step by step, strengthen their relationship. It is crucial to seek support and help from loved ones or a qualified therapist to thoroughly work through accumulated feelings and develop more constructive coping mechanisms. Regular, even small, steps towards self-care and forgiveness can eventually restore a sense of self-worth and a lost connection with the world. The person acknowledges their share of responsibility for the fall that occurred and accepts all the consequences of their actions. He expresses a reluctance to face further hatred or unfounded accusations that he supposedly deserves all of this. While taking full responsibility for the mistakes made, he intends to actively work to correct the situation. The support and understanding of those around him are of great importance as he seeks to learn valuable lessons from his experiences and continue his personal growth.